Lakers fans, I want you to hear something with your own ears before I tell you what happened today, because the contradiction is the entire story. 3 weeks ago, Joe DeMars, the Pelicans' executive vice president of basketball operations, stood in front of a room full of reporters and said, and this is a direct on-the-record quote, "Listen, we have no intentions of doing that." That was his answer when directly asked whether New Orleans would trade Zion Williamson this offseason. No intentions. On the record, multiple outlets carried it. That was the official organizational position, repeated, unambiguous, and widely reported as the closing chapter on months of trade speculation. And at 12:44 this afternoon, on a live Sportscenter cut-in, Shams Charania walked onto the desk and told the entire basketball world that Joe DeMars' own words, spoken with a straight face 3 weeks ago, had already stopped being true by the time he said them. Zion Williamson has been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. Before you scroll off, I'm telling you right now, by the end of this video, I'm going to tell you the specific reason Shams gave for why DeMars' public denial and the actual internal reality diverged so completely, a reason tied directly to a coaching decision most fans dismissed as a minor rotation tweak. I'm also going to tell you what Rob Pelinka did on a conference call with season ticket holders 40 minutes later, a call that was supposed to be routine and instead turned into something else entirely. Stay with me. Do not click off. Here's how it went down. Reese Davis is anchoring a SportsCenter cut-in discussing Summer League performances when the control room clearly interrupts him with real force. He stops mid-sentence. "We're going to Shams, this is breaking right now," and they cut. Shams delivers, and this is the direct transcript. I want to walk through why Joe DeMars' public comments a few weeks ago don't actually contradict what happened today, even though on the surface they appear to. My understanding is that at the time DeMars made those comments, the front office genuinely had not decided to move Williamson. That decision reportedly crystallized only after New Orleans' own coaching staff, under new head coach Jamal Mosley, ran an extensive evaluation of the Williamson-Derek Queen frontcourt pairing during summer league and private scrimmages, and concluded internally that the fit simply does not work at a level that justifies building around both long-term. Once that internal basketball evaluation was finalized, separate from and after DeMars' public comments, the front office moved quickly. This deal is agreed to in principle. It sends Williamson to Los Angeles in exchange for draft compensation and young pieces that specifically support New Orleans' decision to build around Queen and their guards long-term instead. This is real, and the timeline explains why DeMars wasn't lying. He just hadn't gotten the final internal answer yet when he said it. Read that back. He hadn't gotten the final internal answer yet when he said it. That is an extraordinarily specific piece of internal timeline reporting. Not just what happened, but a precise explanation for why a direct, on-the-record denial and a subsequent trade are not actually contradictory, which is exactly the kind of nuance an insider only has access to when he's spoken with people who were in the room for both moments. And 40 minutes later, as I promised, Rob Pelinka was on a scheduled, fairly routine conference call with Lakers season ticket holders, the kind of call that usually covers logistics and doesn't make news, except this one did. A recording obtained by ESPN's Dave McMenamin captured Pelinka fielding a question about roster plans, and instead of deflecting, Pelinka said, and I'm quoting directly from the leaked audio, "I'll just say this, you're going to be very happy with what's coming across your TV screens in the next hour. I've been waiting a long time to say that." Read that back. I've been waiting a long time to say that. That is the general manager of the Los Angeles Lakers, on a call with paying season ticket holders, essentially confirming breaking news 40 minutes before most reporters had fully processed Shams' report, using language that suggests genuine, personal, months-long anticipation rather than a same-day scramble. Now, the whiplash, because I know exactly what you're thinking. DeMars said no intentions on the record. That's about as clear a denial as you get in this league. How does that square with a trade happening 3 weeks later? And here's the honest answer, and it requires understanding something that happens more often in the NBA than fans realize. A general manager's public statement is a snapshot of organizational intent at that exact moment, not a binding contract about the future. DeMars was not lying when he said it. He was accurately describing where the organization stood before their own coaching staff completed a specific, extensive evaluation of whether Williamson and Queen could coexist long-term. Once that internal basketball conclusion changed, the organizational position changed with it, and fast. That is not deception. That is an organization's evaluation evolving in real time, exactly as Shams described. Stay with me. Because once you understand exactly why Zion fits this specific post-LeBron Lakers roster, this stops being shocking and starts being the single most logical outcome of the entire summer. 3 reasons Shams was this confident. Reason 3 is where the reveal lands. Reason number 1. Since LeBron's departure to Philadelphia, the Lakers have been missing a very specific, very physical dimension. A downhill, rim-attacking, bully ball finisher who can generate easy baskets at the rim, regardless of how the half-court offense is flowing. Luka Doncic is a brilliant half-court creator, but this roster has lacked a genuine vertical physical threat who forces defenses to respect the paint on every single possession. Zion Williamson, when healthy, remains one of the most physically dominant interior scorers in the entire NBA, a player who converts at an elite rate at the rim regardless of contact. Pairing that specific archetype with Luka's elite passing vision, particularly on lob reads and drive and kick opportunities to the dunker spot, creates an interior scoring dimension this roster has simply not had access to since LeBron's physical decline in recent seasons. Reason number 2. And this is the tactical detail specific to why JJ Redick's coaching staff reportedly views this pairing so favorably. Redick has repeatedly discussed in interviews the value of pace and early offense, getting into actions quickly before a defense can fully set. Zion, even accounting for his well-documented injury history, remains an elite transition finisher, someone who can convert immediately off a Luka outlet pass or a live ball turnover before a defense has organized. That specific skill, converting the fast break and early offense opportunities that Luka's passing creates, is exactly the archetype this roster has lacked, and it complements rather than duplicates Michael Porter Jr.'s perimeter shooting, giving Redick 2 entirely different non-overlapping ways to punish a defense. And before I get to reason 3, because reason 3 is the specific reasoning behind Dumars' timing, talk to me in the comments. Lakers fans, real question. Does Zion's well-documented injury history worry you enough to overshadow the tactical fit? Or do you believe a full offseason and a fresh situation changes his outlook? I think the fan base is going to be genuinely split on how much risk is acceptable here, and I want to read the argument. Go! Reason number 3, the reasoning. Ready? New Orleans' own coaching staff concluded internally that the fit simply does not work at a level that justifies building around both long-term. Read that back. This is not a vague general explanation. This is Shams explaining a specific internal basketball conclusion that Williamson and Queen, despite being New Orleans' 2 biggest recent investments, were formally evaluated by the new coaching staff and found to be fundamentally incompatible long-term. That is precisely the kind of granular, internal basketball reasoning that widely circulated public reporting had already flagged as a real, ongoing concern. Multiple outlets had independently described the Williamson-Queen fit as deeply problematic, with neither player providing rim protection or floor spacing. When Shams' exclusive reasoning for the trade matches, almost precisely, concerns that had already been reported independently by multiple other outlets over the preceding months, that is not coincidence. That is confirmation that the specific fit problem journalists had already identified from the outside was the exact same problem the front office had identified from the inside, and it finally reached a breaking point. Now, the skeptic, Stephen A. Smith, predictably erupted. Joe DeMars looked reporters in the eye and said, "No intentions." And 3 weeks later, he's traded. And you're telling me the Lakers are taking on a guy who played only 30 games the year before this one, who has a documented years-long history of missing significant time, right after you just lost LeBron James and are trying to build a healthy, sustainable roster around Luka? You're replacing one injury risk with another injury risk. And listen, Stephen A. His injury concern is completely legitimate. Williamson's career has been repeatedly disrupted by hamstring, back, and other soft tissue injuries, and any team acquiring him has to seriously grapple with that pattern, not wave it away with optimism. But here's the counter. The season immediately preceding this trade was genuinely different. 62 games played, his second highest total since being drafted, with reports specifically noting he looked fitter and more explosive than in recent years. This is not a team betting blindly on hope. This is a team betting on the most recent, most extensive data point available. A real season of improved availability, not a hypothetical. Stephen A. is anchoring to Zion's worst historical seasons. Pelinka is anchoring to his most recent, most encouraging one. Here's the part of this story that carries genuine irony. Zion Williamson back in April told reporters directly that New Orleans is home for him, that it's where I want to be. And now, months later, he is walking into a completely different city, a completely different organization, forced to build a new home in Los Angeles at the exact moment the Lakers themselves are rebuilding their own identity after LeBron's departure. Two parties, both navigating a version of the same word, home, meaning something entirely different than it did just months ago. That is not a coincidence of language. That is the exact kind of unplanned symmetry that makes this story resonate beyond the box score. But I owe you the honest risk. Even with an improved availability season behind him, Zion's specific injury history is extensive enough that no single healthy season fully erases the pattern, and building real offensive continuity around a player whose health remains genuinely uncertain carries real risk for a Lakers team trying to establish stability in a critical post-LeBron transition year, so let me bring it home. Zion Williamson to the Lakers matters because he specifically provides the downhill rim-attacking dimension this roster has lacked since LeBron's decline, because his transition finishing complements rather than duplicates the perimeter shooting already added this summer, and because Shams' specific explanation of the Williamson-Queen fit evaluation matches concerns independent reporters had already identified for months. Rob Pelinka's own leaked comments to season ticket holders are the receipt that this had been in motion far longer than the public timeline suggested. Now here's what I'm watching next, and this is the next video, so hit subscribe. If Zion lands in Los Angeles, the very next question is exactly what draft compensation New Orleans received, and whether it signals a genuine full rebuild around Derek Queen and their young guards going forward. I've got a read on it that will surprise you. For now, comments, likes, subscribe. Lakers fans, Dumars said no intentions. His own coaching staff said otherwise. Wild summer.